think I'd been away from Abersychan for about 9 years. 9 years. And I was living with foster parents in Cardiff in Tinnakai Grove, 21. Robin Hill, the house was called. We were fostered there by David Lloyd George, which was the great-great-grandson of the Prime Minister of Britain, and his wife and his mother-in-law upstairs, which we never saw. When I was 14, I decided to cycle back to Abersychan from Cardiff, from Robina, and to have a look at Cawood Cottage where I was born in and see my nan. And I'd cycled up to Abersychan, pushed the bike up the gully by the cottage, and there was nobody in there at all. And it looked as if it hadn't been lived in for a long time. You know, a bit of a shock to me that. So I just decided to get on the bike and ride all the way back to Cardiff. We, as a family, as I'm one of 8 children, we lived in the left side in the little room of the cottage. It was quite a small cottage. It was quite cold in there. There was one fire in a black lead grate, which was the cooker, and everything was cooked there. Mainly a pot of stew and bread and butter. That was about the staple diet of us. The back kitchen was always flooded, and under the stairs was full of coal. Our dad used to get coal because he was a miner. Upstairs there were 3 rooms. One was a half-walled room on the top of the stairs. There was a guy called Wilf who used to lodge with us. And then the next room was where my mum and dad was, and my younger sisters. We used to sleep in the room to the right, in a big brass bed. Our nan used to be on the end of the bed, and then the rest of us in age would be pressed right up against the wall. A graveyard next door, north of the chapel. I can remember going round with my brothers and sisters when there was a wedding there, and in those days they'd throw money onto the road, onto the pavement, and being 8 kids, we'd be taken down to pick the money up from it was thrown out by the best man or someone. And then when we got all the money, our dad would take us back up to the house and count it out and give us 8 each, keep the rest, and he'd go off down the pub then and have a drink. The memories that I had from there were, none of them were rainy days. It was quite odd. The last memories of Abersychan was through looking through the windows of a car, a black car, and the car belonged to a woman from social services. I don't know if it was called social services or children's services at that time. It was a Mrs. Pritchard, and I remember being in class in school, someone coming to the class and asking me to go to the head teacher's office. I went there, and my brother and sister were there. As we knew Mrs. Pritchard, she'd visited the house once or twice. Couldn't quite work out why she was coming to the house. And then she put us in a car, and we drove from Pentwyn School across towards the Big Arch, and that was the view that I saw, etched in my mind, the last view of Abersychan for a long, long time. Cawood Cottage is gone now. It used to be down next to the chapel, but there's nothing there now. Of course, all the family that was up here have left as well. Brothers and sisters were taken away with me at that time and put into care. So Abersychan for me almost ended then. Looking now back down over there, it's quite empty, and whereas before, although the houses were quite old and a lot of people didn't have much to get by on, there were good memories. You could go in one door and come out another of the cottages on 15 houses, and everybody knew each other. It was a good strong community. I remember a time up Abersychan where my brother Jack and Fran, or Jack and Stan, we'd go up High Street, up the top of High Street, and then drop down into the old Lion. We then climbed the bank the other side under the Big Arch, and there was an ash tip up there, as we called it. And I think, I don't know, Chad Valley Toys or something like that. There must have been a toy factory around this area. And the the toys that came out with a deformed limb or head missing or leg missing or not to standard were dumped, and we used to look around the ash tip and try and piece dolls together or get some dolls to bring home, and that's the toys we had. That's the toys we had to play with. Things have changed so much. Mays's shop have gone, Cawood Cottage has gone, the Memorial Hall has gone. I can still picture in my mind's eye how Abersychan was when I was living there, and I think that's how I come to terms with it. I just like remembering, perhaps after 5, what I didn't have. I see the people, I remember the people, I remember walking down High Street, the pub windows open, the church with people singing in it, the old gas lamp opposite Mays's shop. Because I relived that when I was away. I just relived that every day in my mind, those pictures, and that's how I see Abersychan now.